My name is Annette Brower. Welcome to Prelude Strings. We are thrilled to have you here to spend some time with us. This is the final concert of our 31st season. It doesn't fail. Every time I'm at a rehearsal or a concert, I look around and I think, how did this happen? How did I find these fantastic people? Where did all these kids come from? But as I said many times before, you just have to keep showing up. And somehow it works out with really great people all the way around, the parents, the kids, the staff, everybody. So I have a deep appreciation for everyone here and helping me realize my dream that happened about 32 years ago. I believe I wanted to announce first, I think we have some of our Prelude Strings board members here. Alyssa Command is here, and Tyler Holcomb, and do you mind standing, Alyssa? Alyssa is now here with her granddaughter. Her children played in the orchestra. Tyler Holcomb passed out our programs today. His children are, far and away adults now, and we're grateful for their support. We also have Mary Shebug and Lana Crescent, who are new on our board. If you can stand, thank you. Alumni and teachers in the area. Ken Crescent did our Costco run. He's been doing that for many years for our reception, so no one's going hungry because of Ken. Macie is not only one of our conductors, but she's also our head string coach, and she's the secretary on our board. One person, Patty Hicks. She's our treasurer. I don't think she's here, but we are certainly grateful for Patty. And she also volunteers her time and marks cello parts with fingering. And we're grateful for Patty for literally decades of being a volunteer. So hold that for you. We will start with Prelude String Orchestra under the direction of Mrs. Macie, Sweeney-Slick. Good morning and welcome to our concert, the end of our 31st season, which is just absolutely amazing. Today's concert, it's such a journey getting from the beginning of the school year until now. With the students in Prelude, many of them had never played in an orchestra before, prior to auditioning for the Prelude String Orchestra and joining, which is just incredible because our first rehearsal, we were literally trying to play staccato quarter notes together and trying to get 40 students to play together at the same time. No talk of the fun elements of music, the dynamics, the phrasing. So knowing where we started, I think you will be absolutely blown away by how far they've come in the music that they're playing. They are far beyond just notes and rhythms. The theme for our concert today is historical inspirations, and you will be hearing musical depictions of famous stories, people, events that have shaped the world as we know it today. I think you're going to absolutely love the program. We're going to be starting off with our first piece entitled Air Warriors by Erica Donahoe, and it is a tribute to the service members of the United States Air Force, and I think you're going to absolutely love the exciting rhythmic component of this that definitely captures the ethos of the warrior spirit. So please enjoy Air Warriors. 1812 overture. Except there's a twist, in that we will be taking all of our eighth notes and doing it jazz style. We're going to be swinging our eighth notes, meaning what the students see on the page is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. But what they actually end up playing is what we call swing eighth notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. It's a very, very exciting piece, and they're just doing absolutely wonderful with it. So please enjoy the 1812 bar blues. Triads, arranged by Deborah and talk about historical inspiration. In this piece, you will hear some of the most famous melodies ever written. They transcend language, countries, all of our differences, and people know all of these melodies, and it's just so cool to put them all together in one piece. So listen for the beginning of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. I think you'll recognize that one. We will also be playing Mozart's Eine kleine Nacht music, the Ode to Joy melody from the fourth movement of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, a little taste of Furley's, and Offenbach's Can-Can. This piece is really fun because oftentimes the students are passing these melodies back and forth, and sometimes they are clashing together at the same time. Enjoy.
that called me 32 years ago, and we thought, oh, let's just get started and see what we got. And to see the board and all the coaches and another conductor and everything, how it's grown from our 10 kids to begin with. It's just been amazing. It's been quite a ride, and it's still continuing. We have auditions in August for next year, for the 32nd season, so hopefully most of you will be auditioning and continuing on. This is Prelude SINFONIA. This is our second orchestra, and as we are continuing our historical inspirations, we're going to begin with, when I first saw this piece, I mean, I've done it before and I really enjoy it. Paul Bunyan's Suite, I thought, yeah, Paul Bunyan, he's kind of a folk hero, and I did some looking on Google, and he was a real person. I didn't know Paul Bunyan was a real person. He was a real person. He was over 7 feet tall, he was a lumberjack, and then the stories continued from there with his blue ox, and when he drug his axe, it made the Grand Canyon because he was so big, and when his ox it was raining and they made all these big mud holes. It made all the 1,000 lakes in Minnesota. He was a big ox. So obviously the stories continued and grew. But Paul Bunyan was a real person. And so we're going to be playing Paul Bunyan's Suite. It's 3 movements. And as we do traditionally, I ask that you refrain from applauding until the end of the 3rd movement. We'll just continue the story with having a fast movement and then a slow movement where the blue ox is sleeping, and ending with Lumberjack Reel. Carpathia, and you know what this is related to historically. I don't see very many hands up there. I see a few hands up there. Carpathia is the name of the ship that came to the rescue of the survivors of the Titanic. They got the word that the Titanic was going down. They got the coordinates of exactly where the ship was, and that the captain of that ship, full speed ahead, through the icebergs, through the place where the Titanic hit an iceberg and sank. They went through there, engines boiling, the air was steaming, the water was steaming. I mean, you just hear the hissing and the rumbling, and because they had to get there as fast as they could. And when they got to the coordinates exactly where the Titanic was, they stopped, and there was nothing there. Because the ship had sunk, and when the ship sank, the waves made all the lifeboats go miles away. So they got to the spot, and it was silent. And then they started looking, and they saw, there's a lifeboat over there. They went out there. They were rescued, 706 people out of the over 2,000 that were on the ship. But 706 survived because Carpathia came to the rescue. This is a musical interpretation of what that would be like. You'll hear the rumbling of the engines and the hissing and the music and stopping and looking and then going and actually surviving. So it's a great piece, musically telling the story of Carpathia. Fanfare for Freedom. Usually when I think of a fanfare, I think of trumpets and brass instruments. But this was written specifically for strings. And even though it's not an American melody, it sounds very American to me. And it's just kind of a big fanfare celebrating the freedom that we have here in our country. And those of us that have been to other countries know that it's very unique. We're not perfect. Our country has a lot of problems. Yeah, we're not perfect, but honestly, I'd rather live here than anywhere else. So this is our fanfare for freedom. see those planes going up and flying around. Iditarod. Something in history. What is Iditarod? It's the race of the dog sleds in Alaska that lasts how many days? A week? About a week? Day after day after day, mile after mile after mile, up in the Alaska frontier with the animals and the snow and the storms and amazing that they would do that every year. In fact, as we were rehearsing, the Iditarod was beginning in January. Macie keeps track of these things. And she said, it's starting now. So we were starting to learn the song as they were starting, but they ended it long before we finished. Yes. But you'll just hear it go slow, and then suddenly it's getting faster and slow as they're changing, and the dogs go running after some animal or something. I don't know. It's just craziness trying to do that. But this is, again, a musical representation of something that happens every year, the Iditarod. That's quite a ride. For all of us, isn't it? Kind of keeps going and going. Well, I'm going to ask Mr. Stephen Gertson to come up. Our final piece today, I will not get emotional. I have to concentrate on this. Lincoln at Gettysburg. Mr. Gertson is our history teacher here at Calvary Christian School. He has a passion for American history, Lincoln, Theodore Teddy Roosevelt, and others like him. And so when we were going to do this piece, I thought I have to ask him to be our narrator. This is telling the story of how Lincoln wrote the Gettysburg Address. And then we will end with the Gettysburg Address. The orchestra is playing Civil War tunes as background music for setting the stage for the narration. So this is just kind of a little moment in history that we're going to be finishing our concert with today. Lincoln at Gettysburg.
What prominence could possibly convey the somber appreciation of a grateful nation for their sacrifice? What tender words could he offer to the comfort of the hearts of grieving loved ones? So many mothers, so many fathers, so many wives, daughters, and sons. The president poured over his speech as the train wound its way through the rolling Pennsylvania countryside. Finally, arriving at Gettysburg, he retired to his room, where he continued to ponder, to write, revise, and then write some more, until well into the night. At breakfast the next morning, Lincoln made his final revisions, carefully folded the speech, and gently placed it in his coat pocket. Accompanied by 9 governors, 3 cabinet officials, various members of Congress, smile and uncovered head to the throng of women, men, and children that greeted him from the doors and the windows of the town. At the cemetery, an audience of 9,000, though some would say many more, crowded around the speaker's platform in a broad half circle. One of those assembled there later recalled that, quote, all about were traces of the fierce combat. Rifle pits, cut and scarred trees, broken fences, pieces of artillery, wagons and harnesses, scraps of blue and gray, and bent canteens were still littering that low hilltop. The ceremony began. Chaplain Thomas Stockton offered the invocation. Edwin Everett, the former governor of Massachusetts and one of the nation's most famous orators now, presented an eloquent address that lasted over 2 hours. After he was done, Abraham Lincoln arose. He shook Everett's hand and removed the papers from his coat. He put on his wire spectacles, and then he turned to the anxious throng before him. The audience grew immediately still. Then Lincoln spoke for just over 2 minutes. But in 10 sentences, he invoked those exalted principles of freedom, of humanity, and of a unified nation to which he, like the brave soldiers he honored that day, had dedicated his own life. These are the words he spoke. These are the words that Abraham Lincoln spoke that day at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. 407 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now, we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate it. We cannot consecrate it. We cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggle here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will know nor will remember what we say here,
said, do you think it would be okay if I started an Instagram page? And I said, absolutely, as long as I don't have to do any work. I will not do anything. I said, you have to do all the work. She said, sure, I'll do it. So we are really grateful for the link. She doesn't have room to accept this. Put it right there. Okay, so the next person I want to recognize is Zoe. About this time last year, I went to Zoe and I said, Zoe, I need an assistant manager. She's like, sure, I'll do it. So that's pretty much how that job came about. And she is proactive and she has ideas about Prelude. And I don't know how I find these people. They're just so passionate and so capable. And I'm really grateful for her. So thanks, Zoe. We really need someone else, and Macie is so incredible. She had these 2 former students. She said, I know a couple of people, so we just basically called them up and said, you want a job? So anyway, we want to thank Meyer. Have this one for him. Of course, for Helen, now I want to emphasize that the kids and the parents arranged for these gifts and these flowers, so thank you, kids and parents. Okay, Macie.
One of Macie.
Macie started substituting for our farmer string coach 14 years ago, Newbold, and we knew right away that she was the one. And so she's been our string coach for 13 years. She also has been the orchestra conductor for Prelude Orchestra for the last 4 years. In fact, she is the reason that we even have 3 orchestras, because 2 days before auditions in 2021, I called her and I said, Macie, we have 40 qualified kids, and we're going to have to turn them down. 40 more qualified kids, than we can possibly accept into orchestra. She said, I'll do it. I'll conduct this orchestra. So she has been passionate and proactive. She is the reason for so much of the success of the orchestra. She said, we need to be marking these cards before rehearsal. I said, yeah, we probably should. And she implemented that. I can't even begin to talk about all the things that she's done for us. And our announcement today is that this is Macie's lesson. She came to me a few months ago and we talked about it, and I fell into a state of deep depression for a couple of months. That is just not far from the truth. And I finally pulled myself together, and we have found 4 people that are highly qualified. I don't know how we're going to choose between the 4, but we're going to try within the next year. But in the meantime, Meyer. Is graduating Long Beach State this year with a degree in piano performance, violin performance. And he is taking a year, possibly 2, off, and he substituted this year for, I think, chamber strings and for Prelude String Orchestra. And both Macie and I, our mouths dropped open when we watched him, and we thought, he is really good at that. So we are just thrilled to offer him this position for the next year while we find, I don't know, we can find a replacement, but we're going to do the very best we can to find a permanent replacement. So, but anyway, again, I said at the beginning, I don't know how I find these people. 32 years ago, I found Helen. We wanted to start an orchestra. We started with 10 kids, and it just got a little out of control. And here we are with, you know, more than 100 kids in the program and all these wonderful people and musicians. I want to tell you one short thing. Years and years ago, my grandfather asked me, he said, what is the greatest resource in the world? And he was a doctor of horticulture, so I thought, well, he wanted me to tell him food or water or something like that. And he said, no, it's people. And that was a great lesson to me as, I don't know, a 10 or 12-year-old. And that has, I have learned over time that he is absolutely correct. The greatest resource in the world is people, and I am surrounded by some of the greats. So thank you very much, and I hope that you will all take the opportunity to congratulate both Macie and Meyer in their ventures, and we